Swiss Guard. The Vatican City is an independent part of Italy, and also considered to be the smallest country in the world. As the center of Catholicism, it is also the operating grounds of the Swiss Guard, which main responsibility is for the safety of the Pope. The Corps is also often called the world's smallest army. An army that has been given a shimmer of high quality and military proficiency. This partly due to the small number of guardsmen and their recruitment requirements. The Guard, who are an independent part of the Swiss armed forces, are employed by the Roman Catholic Church under the leadership of the Pope, to whom they swear fealty. Besides from serving as personal escorts to the Pontiff, they are also serving as watchmen for the Vatican City and the Pontifical Villa of Castel Gandolfo. So why does the Swiss Guard exist, and why do they have this position in the Vatican? Well, to elaborate that, let's rewind a bit. The Helvetians, who were the ancestors to the Swiss, had started to come under pressure from Germanic tribes in the 2nd century BC, so about 60 years before Jesus. They tried to move into Gaul instead, and the Romans said no, and sent them back into what is now northern Switzerland. But then the Romans were like, hey, let's be friends anyway. And a few years later they said, let's also share that land you got there. So then the Romans moved in, and northern Switzerland came to be under Roman control thanks to the Roman Emperor Augustus. Yay! The Helvetians would now help manning the Roman forts on this newly established northern frontier.
Hey you, go away!
Well, bite me!
Oh yeah? Well, bite on this! Well, don't you come any closer.
The ancient Roman scholar, Tacitus, later then stated, the Helvetians are a people of warriors, famous for the valor of their soldiers. The Helvetii were, however, despite their hard resistance, defeated and mingled into the Germanic tribes when the Roman Empire started to crack down during the mid-5th century. The people in this central part of Europe, which was now mingled, now come to form a proto-Swiss society. After a lot of different interactions with neighboring lands and its peoples, the Swiss areas came to be swept into the Frankish kingdom, which later became a part of Charlemagne the Great's Carolingian Empire. This empire did, however, split after a few decades. And after some of its last emperors, like Charles the Bald, who might have been quite hairy, and Charles the Fat, who might or might not have been fat, it did also completely fall apart for a short while. So during the empire's decline in the 9th century, the Swiss areas came under the rule of a Burgundian kingdom. But in between the 9th and 11th century, it would be incorporated into what would become the Holy Roman Empire. During the end of the 12th century, the Habsburg dynasty, who were kind of a big deal in Europe and the Holy Roman Empire during this time, started to expand into the Swiss areas. This led to confrontations between the Habsburg and several minor, but relatively autonomous communities, also called cantons. These cantons were, in defense of their liberties, ultimately pressed to form the Swiss Confederation, or Confederatio Helvetica as it is also called, in the year of 1291. The warriors of the Swiss cantons would during the coming years gradually develop a reputation throughout Europe as skilled soldiers. This was partly due to their successful defense of their liberties against their Austrian Habsburg overlords. As the importance of mercenary forces grew during the late Middle Ages, soldiers from the now formed Swiss Confederation were starting to become a highly valued and well-appreciated resource on the battlefields amongst different kingdoms and states, especially then by kingdoms like France and Spain. The Swiss mercenaries' value came from their over the years earned battle prowess and efficiency, by for example using deep rank mass attacks with spears and halberds. Tactics and experience that in the coming decades would earn them many victories. The guardsmen began to offer their mercenary services to the Papal States during the late 14th and 15th centuries. This hiring was a lot thanks to the Swiss bishop Matthaus Scheiner, who during his career acted as a politician, bishop, and military commander. So during 1505, Matthaus Scheiner, who was acting on behalf of Pope Julius II, proposed the creation of a permanent Swiss army group that would operate under the direct control of the Pope, which got both thumbs up. So then a permanent Swiss contingent was created that would come to operate under the direct control of the Pope.
Who frickin' wrote this map? Which is the way?
The first group that arrived at the Vatican consisted of 150 guardsmen, led by Captain Caspar von Silenen. They soon earned a reputation for self-sacrifice and bravery, as was demonstrated during the sack of Rome in the year of 1527. Vatican had for several hundred years been a place for power struggle between different European rulers. And during these years a new struggle started to grow between Francis I of France and the Emperor Charles V of the Holy Roman Empire. Besides that, Charles V was the seemingly most powerful ruler in Europe, which kind of went to his head. He also saw himself as the appointed divine ruler of Christianity and Europe, including France.
Frank, get him off our roof.
I have been trying for 2 hours. He just won't come down.
Through his ambitions, Charles V then started, like many other rulers did at the time, to support certain cardinals in the election of a new pope. As a result of an intense supporting program, the cardinal supported by Charles did eventually win the election in 1523, and now got the name Clement VII. However, Clement started to almost immediately getting on the emperor's nerves, through different undesirable actions. The last straw was drawn during the Italian Wars when Charles was fighting the French in northern Italy. Charles learned that Clement had secretly been making peace negotiations with the French, which Charles, in anger, immediately considered treason. Right after Charles' victory over the French army in Pavia during year 1525, Charles gave his commander in Italy, the Duke of Bourbon, and the Dukes disciplined 5,000 Spanish troops to have a small, and a little bit stern, conversation with the Pope. However, another imperial commander decided to conscript around 10,000 Landsknecht mercenaries to join the force, now marching south. These guys were not as disciplined as the Spanish soldiers. Unless you had a lot of money.
Okay, keep it together, men. I want everyone in line when we get to Rome. Oh, you son of a b-
After reaching the city walls of Rome, the Duke of Bourbon immediately started to lay siege to the city, which by this time was defended by a militia, including the elite Italian Black Band mercenaries and the Swiss Guard.
To glory, men! Follow me! Damn, it's foggy. Oh, you son of a bitch!
Hey, that guy owes me money.
So with the loss of their employer and paymaster, the Landsknecht were like, hey, we don't like that, and then started to go into a frenzy. This resulted in a not-so-gently swarming of the city walls. So the Pope, now in grave danger, was transported by 42 of his elite personal Swiss Guard in a wild escape through secret passageways, which all led to the fortress of Castel Sant'Angelo. Meanwhile, to protect the escape route, the rest of the remaining 147 Swiss Guards stayed behind at the obelisk in front of St. Peter's, preparing to make their final stand. While succeeding in doing this, they were all finally overrun and killed, which happened next to the Teutonic Cemetery by the onslaught of imperial forces storming the city. Thanks to their sacrifice, the Pope could safely reach the fortress of Castel Sant'Angelo. With its fortifications, the remaining papal forces could now defend against the Imperials and withstand the rest of the invasion. The rest of Rome did, however, suffer massively from the looting that now took place. To stop the looting, Pope Clement agreed to pay a huge ransom and cede substantial territory to Charles V, who, although embarrassed by the brutal conduct of his troops, was happy to accept the advantage he had gained.
I'm glad that we could finally reach an understanding. But hey, no harm done, right? Everything is as good as new.
The last of the imperial looters left Rome somewhere in the year of 1528. But after having ravaged the city for several months, the power of the papacy had been severely diminished and Rome's population reduced by approximately 80%. This event would then leave everlasting consequences for all of Europe. However, through their last stand and sacrifice, the Swiss Guard managed to protect the Pope, which ensured the survival of the papacy. After some decades of declining importance and focus on purely ceremonial activities, the Guard would in the late 1910s be reshaped and once more introduced to rigorous military exercises. All this was done under the leadership of Commander Jules Ripon, and in order to reintroduce the Guard to its former glory, Ripon also designed the Renaissance uniform that the Guard can be seen wearing today.
That's it. I want more flamboyant.
How much more flamboyant can you possibly want?
All of it.
So from now on, the guardsmen would be clad in the colors which belonged to the powerful Medici house, who had strong ties to the papacy. So if we fast forward into the 1940s, the now reborn Swiss guards prepared for similar self-sacrifice during World War II as they did in the year of 1527. The vastly outnumbered guardsmen took up defensive positions as the German forces rolled into Rome. However, the Germans did in the end decide not to attack the Vatican, which led to the city never being occupied during the war.
Nein.
These acts of discipline and loyalty would earn the Guard an everlasting gratitude from the papacy and as a result continued service. So as of today, the Swiss Guard is still acting as a small standing army and a security force inside the Vatican state.